Spiritual awakening in Eugene, Oregon. I have had many, many types of spiritual experiences, spiritual revelations, and spiritual realizations, but the one where I really was suddenly here was in a motel in Eugene, Oregon. I love saying this because so many spiritual seekers are running all over the place to India and ashrams and sacred sites to find themselves, but really, we're always right here. You're always with you. You can't get away from you even if that's sometimes what you want to do. No, my awakening wasn't in any sort of spiritual place. It was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling of a motel room. It wasn't a comfortable bed. I remember it being stiff, hard, and far too small for me. There was no aromatic incense in the room, and I'm not sure that I'd even meditated that day. In general, I didn't meditate at all during the time running up to my spiritual awakening. Back to my story. And then, there I was. All the noise shut off in my head. It was like coming out from a really noisy concert into a silent inner room. I didn't need to do anything or go anywhere. All desire dropped away except possibly the desire to share the experience, which came later. But I was here fully in the present moment, and then the inner work begins. Letting go and the grand revealing. Spiritual awakening, or enlightenment or ascension or many other words they're the same to me, is not a new thing. It is always here with us. It cannot be attained because it is innately part of all of us. As such, spiritual seeking is often a little backward. It can be useful to get started, but eventually, letting go is the truest way to this deep space of love and connection. I want to emphasize the connection part of this path. The unconscious ego gets us caught up in duality separation. We get separated from ourselves mainly because we believe we are separated. The more we get caught up in the external world, in ideas, in experiences, and so on, the more separated we tend to get. This includes the spiritual path. Some of the most unconscious people you will ever meet are on the spiritual path. The worst are the ones spreading hate about other, non-believers, of the path. This is in no way spiritual, even though the divine loves them and holds them too. Loving people who spread hate is a profound love, but it's a love to which we all have access. In a spiritual awakening, people find an amazing new depth of love and connection to all beings, although everyone is. I wouldn't have described my spiritual awakening as having the dominating love flavor at first. That flavor has come out as I've moved into my self-work to pull away from my lies and illusions. For others, love is a huge initial flavor, while truth and clarity may be hazy for a while. They don't really know how to express what they know. All ways that people experience a spiritual awakening are beautiful, but as I've said, what really sets this arising apart from the many, many other kinds of spiritual shifts is that it abiding. When the energy abides, healing and spiritual growth arise intelligently on their own. Spiritual shifts beyond spiritual awakening. There are many kinds of spiritual shifts. The spiritual shift is my catch-all phrase. Many people speak of spiritual awakening as the catch-all phrase for spiritual experiences, and I only point it out so that you're clear about how I'm discussing this topic. Spiritual shifts can be things like a small spiritual epiphany that someone's critiques at work are their way of helping you. A spiritual realization that you're not happy with your marriage or job even though you've gotten what you thought you wanted. A spiritual revelation such as you is not your mind or the thoughts that have been talking to you your whole life. However, even with a spiritual revelation, people don't necessarily change. Some do. But a lot of your spiritual journey at this point is very manual. You have to put in the work. You have to figure some things out. It doesn't mean that hard work doesn't come with a spiritual awakening, but an awakening tends to drive you towards things in a way that frightens a lot of people at first. You don't know where you're going. Even if your latest revelation is that you never know where you were going in the first place, people tend to hang on to familiarity against the best interests. It should also be said that epiphanies, realizations, and revelations abound in an awakening. Integrating all of them into your heart, body, and mind can be more than a little exhausting. The paths to spiritual awakening. The spiritual path is not necessarily an easy path. Few people turn to the spiritual path because they're happy with their lives and don't want to lose what they've got. The path of outward success only works for those who have found that all the things they've achieved haven't given them the fulfillment they sought. The path of failure is much more often the path that leads people inwards. In failing, you're willing to open up to something greater because you feel like you've got nothing to lose. This is also the path of great healing, and spontaneous spiritual awakening does arise for those who never wanted it or sought the spiritual path. Truly, the path to spiritual awakening is many and varied. Ultimately, the point of an awakening is to be able to live your life freely and without fear. It's about touching the deepest levels of love and connection, and it's already right here, right now.